Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. On the last video, it's been a while since I've posted, but in the last video I was talking about my most recent book of Sheaves and Stars and how it's impacted me, but what I think we can learn from it. And I talked about how when I publish books and as I'm writing them, I'm addressing three basic questions. And it's during the writing process, before and after, and I'm still learning this for all my books. So I wanted to take you through each of those questions for all the books that I have published. And if you don't know the others, they're at jubileelipsy.com. I have Of Sheaves and Stars, which is about Joseph in Genesis. And then I have My Brother the King, which is a trilogy. And we'll be discussing this book briefly today. So again, the three questions that I address are, what do I think God is teaching his people through this story? What do I think God was teaching the characters in the story? And how has this personally transformed me in my life? And for My Brother the King, which is the first novel that I ever published, and it's the first novel in the David and Jonathan series. It is a biblical fiction novel about the life and friendship of David and Jonathan in 1st and 2nd Samuel in the Bible. And book one, My Brother the King, goes from the time that the two young men meet to the time that David has to run away from King Saul's court because of King Saul's jealousy. Real quick recap on the back cover. Still reeling from his father's break with the God of Israel, Prince Jonathan is in line to inherit a throne that has already been stripped from his family. The young shepherd David is the man after God's own heart, chosen to take Jonathan's place. Carrying a secret anointing that won't stay hidden, David yearns to fight alongside his childhood hero rather than against him, but his calling threatens both their lives at every turn. Instead of fighting to the death over a crown that can't belong to both of them, the two young warriors forsake rivalry and pledge themselves to a friendship forged in the passionate pursuit of the God who called them both. Walk alongside two biblical heroes as they embrace the will of God through a selfless covenant that would withstand the brutal tests of family jealousy and war, a friendship that would change history. And so to answer the three questions that I just brought up with regard to this book, they're really all one and the same. The answer deals with all of the questions, really. What is God saying to us? What was God saying to David and Jonathan? And how has this transformed my life? Honestly, writing it transformed me just as much as the story itself. But I started the whole project with this question about how David and Jonathan were able to have such a world-changing friendship that is famous throughout all of history, but their circumstances actually set them up to be enemies. How were they able to resist that and be friends instead and have this friendship covenant, this brother covenant that extended so deep into the ages? And honestly, what came out of my study and really transformed my understanding was the tagline, world-changing friendship comes from a headlong pursuit of God, or starts with a headlong pursuit of God. So that's really the answer to all three of those questions. I believe what God was teaching David and Jonathan, and is the same thing that he's teaching all of us through their story, this transformative lesson about how we all want vibrant friendships like this. We all want world-changing friendships. We all want to be set apart like David to do the will of God and be brave and slay the giant. We all want to be like Jonathan, who forged his own path even when his father was like trying to force him a different way. We all want to be the best friend, and we all want to have the best friend and accomplish God's powerful will for our lives. But we forget that you can't just do that by pursuing your own ideas, your own desires, going your own way. David and Jonathan were not going after their own way. They were both set apart for a path that was very, very difficult. And yet the reason that Jonathan and David were such great friends and accomplished the will of God through such a beautiful friendship was because they were of the same spirit. They were two halves of the same whole, and that whole that held them together was God. God was their pursuit. Jonathan recognized that same pursuit of God in David, and David recognized it in Jonathan. And that's why they were able to not only be friends and hang out, but pursue God together. That's why they were able to stick to the will of God and be victorious in spite of the circumstances threatening to tear them apart, because their friendship was built and their lives were built in pursuit of the God who called them both. And when you're pursuing God headlong and you're in love with him and in love with his purposes, you can't really be jealous of other people, because you are more excited about God's will being accomplished, that you don't care if you get to be the one, because you understand that, I mean, kings rise and fall, positions come and go, but God is the only one that remains the same. So the best advice that I can give you, and what I have learned from David and Jonathan, is if you want to be victorious, if you want to be powerful, if you want the kind of friendship that they had, pursue the Lord. It's really the answer to anything. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean you'll just get whatever you want, but pursuit of God is what leads to things like accomplishing great things, being full of vibrancy and purpose in your calling in spite of everything, and world-changing friendship. It all starts with a pursuit of God. I'll see you here next time.